Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so in today's episode, I thought I'd try to say something about what seems to be a pretty close connection between existentialism and art, or artists. And I think that the French painter Cézanne might be a good example to talk about here. Okay, but before I get to him, let me try to first explore this broader question, namely, why is there seemingly such a close connection between the existentialist and the artist? Well, I think that maybe it's fundamentally because existentialism emphasizes freedom. And you might say that this is what being a genuine artist is really all about. It's to be free, and it's to be creative in each word, and in each stroke, and in each sequence of notes. I mean, sure, we're all born into a certain culture and world, and nobody can avoid that, that's for sure. But what most artists strive for, at least in part, is to rise above their particular situation and to transform what they're doing into something new. And not only that, but artists can never be completely satisfied with themselves. No, they know that deep down, that would be a kind of artistic death. Complacency and self-doubt and repetition. Well, this is the beginning of the end. They need to live in a kind of perpetual doubt. Well, so too for the existentialist, you might argue. The existentialist is forever on the way to what they will become. In fact, deep down, they know they just are becoming, right up until death, that is. So if they've completely solidified themselves into some permanent role or identity, and if they haven't renewed themselves in each moment, then there's some kind of self-deception going on, some kind of death. So all this is maybe partly why existentialists are so close to and why they admire artists. They don't see them as weird or as marginal or maybe even as immature as many of us do. No, in a way they see them as some of the only ones truly living or living authentically. They're truly living in the sense that they're some of the only people who don't avoid the burden of freedom. And this is definitely not the case for most of us, the existentialist would probably say. No, what most of us do is we play safely by the rules of the game and we capitulate to a mechanized world, and so because of this, we get to avoid making real hard decisions. You know, speaking of being in perpetual doubt and not playing by the rules of the game, as I mentioned at the outset, one artist that comes to mind here is the French painter and a complete loner, Cézanne. Actually, this is someone the French existentialist Merleau-Ponty talked about in an essay that he wrote called Cézanne's Doubt. So what he describes there is Cézanne's perpetual anguish in the face of living up to his freedom as an artist. He talks about how Cézanne constantly drove ahead with his paintings, but all the while completely unsure, and how he would have rather failed than resort to doing anything traditional or derivative. Sometimes, says Merleau-Ponty, it even take him up to 100 tries just to complete a simple still life, and over 150 tries to finish a portrait. Actually, Cézanne was so unsure about himself that sometimes he wondered if his style of painting was just ultimately due to bad eyesight. Okay, but I want to say something more about how Cézanne was trying not to be derivative in his work, because this is something that Merleau-Ponty emphasizes. So what he says about Cézanne is this. He says that he speaks as the first man spoke, and he paints as if no one had ever painted before. Wow. I mean, think about that. To paint like the first man spoke. So here, what Merleau-Ponty is trying to say is that what Cézanne did is he simply executed on how things appeared to him without in any way resorting to precedent or to expectation or to even conception. And here, among other things, I often think of how he often distorts or falsifies perspective. But anyway, this is truly getting something from nothing, isn't it? And as one commentator said, just like the first person to utter a word didn't know if it would end up being anything more than a shout in the wind, well, Cézanne too, in his original attempt, couldn't be sure of what that work would amount to or mean, or whether it would come to life for other people or even ever reach them. I mean, let's face it, it doesn't take an art historian to see that much of what he left us with, to put it simply, like Merleau-Ponty does, is very strange. As some critics have said, his paintings make us wonder if they've been created by another species. I mean, it seems like what Cézanne sees when he looks out at nature are objects altogether out of time, or objects free of any human association. It's kind of weird, but it's fascinating. But again, to get back to my point, that is the sort of uncertainty in which he chose to work and live. But that takes a whole lot of fortitude and courage and sacrifice, right? And all this is what existentialism celebrates and demands. According to the existentialist, what real art is then, just like in life, is really a succession of revolts. It's to create. It's to be subversive. It's to act in freedom, and all the while to keep resilient. Bye for now.